Hey guys! So today we're starting the day 2 video of lesson 7.4, okay? Today we're going to be talking all about the cytoskeleton. Now the cytoskeleton is basically like the skeleton of the cell. You know that our bodies, inside of our body, we have a skeleton that is made up of bones. It supports us, it allows us to move, and it doesn't really change too much throughout our lives. It maintains the same shape because we're supposed to be supported in a specific way. Cells have a different type of skeleton. It's also made up of proteins. It also helps to support the cell and give it shape and structure. However, the cytoskeleton inside of cells is always changing. It's dynamic. It's not going to be the same from one day to the next because it breaks itself down and builds itself up in different places depending on the cell's needs. So if the cell needs a microtubule to be built here, it will be built here. And if suddenly it doesn't need it, it'll break down and it'll go and build itself somewhere else, right? So that's the difference between our skeleton and a cytoskeleton, which is inside the cell. They help to support the cell, they help to give it shape and structure, and they are dynamic, meaning that they change according to the cell's needs. All right? So just remember, cells are not just a big bag of jelly full of cytoplasm surrounded by a cell membrane. That jelly cannot hold the cell into the proper shape and structure. This is why the cytoskeleton is extremely important in maintaining the shape and structure of a cell. So, the cytoskeleton has 4 main jobs. The first thing, obviously, it helps to maintain the structure of a cell and it helps to support it and make sure that it doesn't collapse on itself. All right? The second thing is it allows the cell to move from one place to another. Most of our cells don't move because we're humans. They tend to stay in one place at a time. But a lot of cells in the world move from one place to another. So a lot of the time they'll have like a tail or little hairs on them which allow them to swim and move through water or whatever they're surrounded by. That little tail that you can sometimes find on some cells is made up of the same proteins that the cytoskeleton is made of. You can also find little hairs that help it to swim, and you can also find some cells are able to basically use their cytoskeleton to grab surfaces and drag themselves forward, okay? So, the cytoskeleton doesn't only allow the cell to move from one location to the other, it's also responsible for the movement of materials within the cell. So if I needed a material to be moved from this end of the cell to that end of the cell, the cytoskeleton plays a very important role. This is not just a bag full of jelly and things randomly float from one place to the next. Everything inside of the cell is organized and things move with purpose. So let's take a look at how things move inside of a cell. So you can see in this picture, you have all of these little things which are parts of your cytoskeleton. This large part is called a microtubule, and these smaller parts are microfilaments. Now, the microtubules are extremely important because they allow things to walk across them and move things from place to place. So you see this structure right here. We're going to be talking a little bit more about it later on, probably next week. This is called a vesicle. A vesicle is basically a membrane which contains materials inside. So let's say that this vesicle contained important materials that were on that side of the cell and needed to move to this side of the cell. Basically, this little guy, the motor protein, would grab that vesicle and it would drag it along the microtubule from one end of the cell to the other. So things aren't randomly moving inside the cell. They are moving along microtubules, and this is why the cytoskeleton is extremely important inside of cells, because they help to move things from place to place, as well as giving structure and support to the cell. All right? And the last very important function of the cytoskeleton is that they help in cell division. And we're going to be getting to that in a couple of minutes. All right, So our two main components of the cytoskeleton are microtubules and microfilaments. Microtubules are the ones that we saw earlier that the little guy was walking over, that the motor protein was walking and dragging the vesicle across. They are very large compared to the other parts of the cytoskeleton, and they're found throughout the entire cell. They allow things to be moved from one place to the other, and they can break down and rebuild themselves wherever they're needed, and they allow the cell to have structure and support. They also help to form different structures that we're going to be talking a little more about tomorrow. Microfilaments are thinner strands of proteins. You can see here that they're obviously smaller than microtubules, and they basically help to give the cell extra structure and extra support, and they are also vital to the cell, right? And now, the last thing we're going to talk about today are centrioles. Centrioles are made up of microtubules. So this part right here, and the one that you saw in the video that the little guy was walking over, that the motor protein was walking on, right? These are each made up of many different microtubules, and microtubules can extend out of them. So basically, this is a microtubule, and when I need a new microtubule to be built, it will be built out of one of these and towards a different part of the cell. These are extremely important when it comes to cell division, and centrioles are found inside of animal cells. Okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at what happens during cell division. So if I go here, during cell division, it's extremely important that the two new cells get equal amounts of DNA. So these are each sister chromatids, which are basically identical copies of DNA, and each one needs to be dragged to an opposite side of the cell before the cell divides in half. This is an extremely important job, and all of these little strings are microtubules that are holding on to this chromosome. So you see microtubules holding on to this one, and then on the other side, microtubules are holding on to this. These came from the centriole, okay? So the centriole built microtubules, they grabbed the chromosome, and let's see what happens during cell division. You can see that they're starting to pull apart, and each one of them grabs a chromosome and pulls it apart. And this is the cell overall. You can see that equal numbers of chromosomes are ending up on this side and this side. So right here, you would find a centriole on each side of the cell, and they'd be extending microtubules to grab the chromosomes and pull them to opposite sides of the cell. So this is why centrioles and microtubules are extremely important when it comes to cell division. And as you can see now, each one has the same set of DNA, and they've divided into two new cells. All right, so make sure that if you're confused, you can rewatch the video. And you guys can go ahead and start the day 2 quiz.